Hey there, tech enthusiasts and AI adventurers. Welcome to AI Home Labs, your guide to building powerful AI setups that balance performance and cost. I'm your host Simon, and I'm excited to show you how to harness the power of AI using smart, value-driven solutions. Here at AI Home Labs, we believe that impressive AI technology shouldn't be limited to those with unlimited budgets. Our mission? To help you build AI rigs that offer serious bang for your buck, whether you're working with a modest budget or aiming for pro-level performance. In today's video, we're diving into something special, my personal AI server setup. This old server packs 4 Nvidia P40 GPUs, each coming with 24 GB of VRAM and an old powerhouse of a CPU, the AMD EPYC 7551P with 32 cores and 448 GB of DDR4 ECC RAM, all sourced secondhand of course. Now I'll be upfront. This particular setup costs around 2,000 Swiss francs. That might sound like a lot for a home project, but stick with me because I'll show you why it's actually an incredible value in the world of AI computing. We'll break down why these professional grade components, though a few years old, offer outstanding performance per franc spent. With 96 GB of VRAM and a massive 448 gigs of RAM and some serious computational power, you can run most big LLMs at a fraction of the cost of new consumer-grade hardware. Well, that's quite a statement, I think. But don't worry, if this setup seems out of reach, in future videos, we'll explore a range of builds, from entry-level rigs to powerhouses like this one, and even above. There is something for every budget and need. So whether you're a student dipping your toes into AI, a hobbyist looking to upgrade, or a professional seeking cost-effective solutions, you're in the right place. Now, this build here is specialized for inference, which means for running models and not for training them. But in the future, we'll have a look at many different setups, so don't worry about that. This is my little AI server. It's not a beauty, but what it lacks in beauty, it makes up for in raw computing power. Most of the things in here are secondhand. So most of the things I bought from eBay. It comes with an AMD EPYC 7551P. It has 32 cores and 64 threads. I think it's from 2016, but it's still quite powerful for what I need to do here. The whole motherboard and the CPU together cost me around 400 Swiss francs. I got it equipped with 8 DDR4 ECC RAM sticks. Those I bought from eBay for around $60 or 60 Swiss francs each, and one was faulty, unfortunately. So I don't have the full 512 gigabytes of RAM, I only have 448 gigabytes of RAM, which is still plenty, but it was still a bummer that one didn't work. I run 4 P40s, on which I will say something later. I got it powered all with a Corsair AX1500i power supply, so 1500 watts of power, which are needed because each of these pulls around 250 watts if it's on full load. So 1000 watts, just those 4 P40s, without everything else. Well, but now let's focus on the GPUs. Those are a little bit more difficult to run, and you need to know some things. First of all, these are P-series GPUs, so Pascal series GPUs, so the 1080 is quite similar, but this is actually more similar to the 1080 Ti. So these are really powerful, at least at the time they were really powerful. Today, they have about half the power or half the speed of an RTX 3080, and they're quite good. And the thing that makes them so good is I can run them in parallel. And I know they come with passive cooling, which some might think is a bad thing, but it's actually a great thing because they don't come with those radial coolers, which gaming graphic cards normally come with. And if I run 4 4080s in here with radial coolers, with that little amount of spacing between, they will just heat up insanely. And with those, I can circumvent this without having to deal with dismantling the graphics card and adding another cooling solution. This just works pretty much straight out of the box. For this, I want to show you how I cool them. For this, I got a P40 here, which, as you can see, doesn't have any cooling, but it has a cooling mount, and I 3D printed a cooler which I drew myself, and this one is actually quite easy to install. Okay, spacing here is not perfect, but normally it fits fine. Yeah, now it fits fine. It fits flush. I also have like a space for the cables, so this is easy, and I will also leave a link to the adapter in the YouTube video. So I cool them with two 40mm server coolers, which you can see here. Oh, yeah, obviously. I connect them with normal wood screws, which I insert here. But one could also insert a Haley coil or insert a thread or use normal steel metric screws, whatever you like. I myself did it quite quickly, but perhaps once I will try to solve that nicer, but it works fine. Those have quite a good airflow. Each of those will supply around 40 cubic meters of airflow an hour. So one of those is actually quite powerful, and that's why I chose them. So these are a little bit loud, and for that I got another solution. I use two things in conjunction. I have two kind of controllers. The reason why I have two controllers is one controller is meant for controlling the speed. That's that one. It's a manual control. It's from Noctua. And with this I can just quite easily control the speed of my fans. And the second one I use for distribution. So with that one I actually direct all my four cooling solutions for my GPU. So all my 8 cooling fans are directed by that one, and the Arctic fan hub will distribute it as a signal. The reason why I don't do it digitally is because this motherboard just doesn't support it. Server motherboards have some disadvantages. One of them being that sometimes you can't actually control your fan speed. One other thing you also need to know about these P40s is this is not a normal PCIe cable. Normally if you buy them from eBay, you will get adapters like this one. And if you compare a PCIe to that one, it's actually quite easy to find the difference. Because if you have a look at the lower row, all to the right, you will see that the shape of the last connector is differently. So these are not the same. Please don't plug them in. Please don't plug just a normal PCIe cable in. This perhaps could even ruin your GPU. So use those adapters, and each of those GPUs will demand 2 PCIe cables, because those they pull around 250 watts. So that's quite a lot. But once you know it, it's actually easy. Also, the P40 needs a CPU and a motherboard with AVX2 support. Most modern CPUs and motherboards support this, no matter if it's like a server grade motherboard and CPU or not. But it's one thing to keep in mind. also, like my motherboard, for instance, here, it hasn't got any HDMI out. And these GPUs, they don't come with any HDMI out either, because they are server graphic cards, so they don't need to have any HDMI outlets. So what you can do, or what I did, is just use an adapter for the VGA so that you have an HDMI out, which is easy to do, but you just have to know it, and then it works just fine. One reason why I chose the P40 over something like an RTX 3080 or 4080 is, well, they have 24 gigs of VRAM, which the 40 and 3080 also, 40 and 3090 also have, but they're much cheaper. Like I got mine each for around 120 to 130 Swiss francs, which is not that much for such a GPU. They originally costed multiple $1,000s. But like for 24 gigs of VRAM, this is quite good. And they are at about half the speed of, or half the capability of an RTX 3090, which makes them actually great cards if you want to run it for LLMs. For CNNs, they're fine. They're not very fast, but they're fine. And if you use it for CNNs, it will really use the whole GPU 100% when you're generating something. And this creates quite some heat, and even with 2 fans, this will run at 84, 85-ish degrees in Celsius, not Fahrenheit. So they can get quite hot. If I use it for LLMs, it's fine. They will hover around 60 degrees, even with the fan at 50 or 40%. But if I do something with CNNs, I need to have the fans 100% running. Also for CNNs, it's kind of difficult to get them running in parallel, because most systems or most user interfaces don't support this yet. So that's kind of a problem or a bummer. Right now these GPUs are a little bit more on the expensive side. On eBay they went up, I think, to around $200. So I would probably wait for them to come a little bit down, because I think they will also come down at least when the 50 series gets out, or perhaps even earlier. And otherwise $200 is still fine for a P40. M40's Maxwell GPUs are also quite good, but they're a little bit older. I wouldn't go for the Kepler ones, but later I will show you, or not in this video clip, but in another one, I will show you the performance you get from Kepler and also from Maxwell. So that sums up more or less the reason why I went with P40s, because at the time that I got them, they were really not that much more expensive than M40s, like $20 each. So that was a good deal. So we've talked a little bit about cooling, but it's one thing to talk about it and another thing to actually hear it. This is the sound it produces when you're running LLMs, because LLMs just won't push those 4 GPUs to 100% usage. But if I use it for CNNs, so like Stable Diffusion, I need to have those fans at 100% speed, because they create like a lot of heat at 100% TDP. But I want to show you what that means, and listen to it. These are 4 P40s that are cooled with 8 40mm server fans. They can get quite loud. So if you want to use them for pictures, for creating pictures, for CNNs, just think about it, and also think about where you put it, because you can't have it in the same room as you sit. If you use it for LLMs, it's fine, but if you use it for picture creation, for CNNs, you should really think of where you have your server, because this gets quite loud. And forget about it if you want to cool it less. With CNNs at 100% load, you really need that much amount of fan speed. And if you don't cool it that much, your GPU will have a hard time because it's gonna cook. Now, I want to change to the next part, and that is how much a solution like this actually costs and how difficult it is to build. The parts actually are quite easy to print because I've designed them in a way that you don't need too much supports. So if you're like used to printing 3D prints, this shouldn't be any problems. I would suggest to take PLA as it's just easier and doesn't warp that fast. So I would use PLA. You could also use PET or ABS, but they just warp much faster. Now, this solution helps me to keep the GPU all the time under 85 degrees. If I'm just using LLMs, I'm normally staying at around 50 to 60 degrees at max. So that's quite good. Now, the whole setup here, just for the cooling, is less than 100 Swiss francs. So this is like a DIY solution I did. And there are some value options for those fans, so look out for them. Looking into the future, I might will try to use 3090s or even newer cards because the prices of those continue to drop. But for now, this P40 setup gives me a lot of VRAM to work, and it's like really at a fraction of the cost. In the next section, we'll fire these up and see how they perform in the real world for AI tasks. And let's get ready to see what those can do. Alright, time to put our P40 setup to the test. We'll be running a series of benchmarks, both on large language models and image generation models. Our goal is here twofold. To showcase the raw performance of our GPUs and also to give you a sense of what's possible with 96 gigs of VRAM. We'll start with LLMs. We're going to test Gemma 2, the 9 billion version, but also the 27 billion version. We'll also test Llama 3 and also the 8 billion version and the 70 billion versions. We're also going to test Wizard LM, the mixture of experts, based on the 8 times 22B version from Mistral, and we're going to test them in Q4, Q6, and Q8 in the GGUF version. So originally I thought I'm gonna test it with 3 questions, 2 logic puzzles and 1 knowledge question, but it just doesn't create that much of a difference. So I thought if it's just about tokens per second, I'm gonna leave it with 1 question because it doesn't matter that much. Like the variance is so little that I think we can afford to go with just 1 question. So yeah, we're gonna have a quick look at our results. So with Gemma Q4 KM, we got 28.3 tokens per second, which is really great. And in Q6, we got 22.3 tokens, and in Q8, 21 tokens. So this is really usable. And the biggest dip actually takes place from Q4 to Q6. From Q6 to Q8, it doesn't generally drop that much, sometimes not even a little. This is something we can also see with Gemma 27B. In Q4, we get about 11 tokens, 11.34 tokens. And in Q6, we get 8.6 tokens. And in Q8, we get 8.95 tokens, so even a little bit higher, which is interesting. This is still fairly usable, I'd say. Llama 3 in the 8 billion version seems to run a little bit faster because in Q4, we get 36.19 tokens per second. And in Q6, we get 28.17 tokens per second. And in Q8, we get 28.64 tokens a second. So same game here. We lose a little bit of pace from Q4 to Q6, but not so much from Q6 to Q8. Now we're going to the big chunker, which is Llama Free 70B. In Q4, we only get 4.76 tokens a second. And in Q6, we get 3.59 tokens a second. And in Q8, we get 3.61 tokens a second. This is still usable. It's not fast, but it's still usable. Now, Llama doesn't use a mixture of expert, and Mistral does. So I also tested Wizard LM, which comes with 8 times 22 billion parameters. And I've tested the Q4 version. This clocks in at around 8 tokens a second. So this is really good because 8 tokens a second is usable. So this was actually a nice result. Now I also tested these GPUs for CNNs. I used Pinocchio for that. Like earlier for the LLMs, we used LM Studio, which is great, a great user interface. There are many other user interfaces that you can use, like the Uba Booga text generation if you want to play around with different models, different formats. But like on Pinocchio, you can also find several different interfaces for LLMs, but also for sound models. So if you want to create music, and for video generation and audio, and also for pictures. So I really cannot stress enough, Pinocchio is a great app and it's free. So it's like an app store and it's completely free of charge. So please use it, it's great. If you have older GPUs like the P40, you need to disable CUDA malloc in the ComfyUI if you want to use it there. And make sure to have Xformers enabled. If you don't know how, just write down the question in the comment section and I will quickly show you how. But generally it's a JSON file. It's the start.json file where you have different flags and you need to change those flags one time to disable CUDA malloc, and not CUDA generally, but CUDA malloc, and one time to enable Xformers because it likes to disable Xformers just as a preset, but enable it because it's much faster then. For SDXL, we got 2.18 seconds per step. And for calculation, you generally want to have at least 30 steps. 60 is better. So one picture will take around a minute if you're going for low presets, and 2 minutes if you're going like for high quality. And I also tested Stable Diffusion free because the license changed, so now it's usable, or I think it's usable. And this takes around 2.46 seconds per step, so not a lot longer. And you will also want to have 30 steps or 60, even better. But I think this is quite usable. It's not fast. An RTX 3090 will be much faster, but it also costs much less. So that's fine. I also tested Stable Diffusion video, so stable video. I used the version SVD-XT, so there are different versions. And we got 25.73 seconds per iteration. And you also want to do, or per step, and you also want to do around 30-ish steps. And we got like a video sequence of 4 seconds with the blistering frame rate of 5 pictures a second. So yeah, this takes a long time. So if you want to create videos with P40s, it might take a while and your GPU will get quite hot, around 84 degrees Celsius. But it works. It's just like going to take a long time. And it could heat your room up a lot. Also for CNNs and for video generation, most of the times you can't use all of your P40s, only one, because GPU parallelization seems to be mostly not implemented with picture and video generation models. I don't know why, but I know that there are many discussions in forums and they will be there at some point, but not right now. Now let's talk money. One of the main goals of AI Home Labs is to show you how to build powerful AI setups without breaking the bank. So let's break down the cost of our current setup and compare it to some alternatives. I paid on average 130 Swiss francs per GPU. So all of my GPUs costed around 520 Swiss francs. Unfortunately, they got a little bit more expensive because demand seems to be higher now. So right now you will probably pay around 200 Swiss francs. Those are quite volatile. They can change a lot. For my CPU and my motherboard, I paid around 400 Swiss francs. And for the RAM, I paid around 480 Swiss francs, so 60 Swiss francs per 64 gigs of VRAM. I also paid 100 francs for my case and around 200 francs for a used power supply. And my fan setup costs around 100 Swiss francs. So the Arctic fan cooler fans, they cost around 70 Swiss francs. I got a value bundle. And the controller from Noctua costs 20 Swiss francs. And the Arctic Hub cost me 10 Swiss francs. So this is 100. So all in all, it costs 1,800 Swiss francs, I think. Let's calculate. 520 plus 400, 920 plus 480, which means 1,400 plus 300, which means 1,700 plus the last 100, which means 1,800 Swiss francs. But I, of course, didn't mention the SSD and the PLA I needed to 3D print everything. That will add to the cost a little bit. Now, there is a little consideration that could significantly reduce your cost. Many of you might already have a compatible motherboard and RAM from previous builds. If that's the case, you're looking at a much lower initial investment. You'd essentially just need to focus on the GPUs, power supply, and maybe some cooling upgrades. Speaking of motherboards, perhaps yours supports PCIe bifurcation. If that's the case, you're in for a treat. This feature allows you to split PCIe 16 slots into 4 PCIe 4 slots. While this does reduce bandwidth, it allows you to connect GPUs to a single slot. It's a great way to maximize your GPU capacity, especially if you're working with bandwidth-tolerant workloads. I'll be making dedicated videos on this topic soon, so stay tuned if you're interested in learning more about it. But if you're using those GPUs for training and not inference, stay away from GPU bifurcation. But now let's put our setup price into perspective. A used RTX 3090 with around 24 gigs of VRAM costs around 800 Swiss francs, at least if it's used. Our setup gives us 96 gigs of VRAM for 520 Swiss francs in price. But remember, it's not just about a raw VRAM. The P40s, while powerful, are less efficient in terms of performance per watt compared to newer GPUs. However, for many AI tasks, especially for those requiring large amounts of VRAM, this trade-off can be worth it. But just don't pay too much for the P40s. $200 is fine, but if it goes higher, I wouldn't bother with it. And also, please don't buy Kepler GPUs. They may be fine, but they are not supported with the newest updates, and you will be forced to use an older CUDA version, and you will just have too many problems. The M series works fine, but it's just a little bit slower. A word of caution. When buying used server-grade hardware, always check for compatibility of your setup, especially concerning power requirements and cooling needs. Also ensure that your motherboard supports features like AVX2 that you will really need. In our next video, we'll explore some more budget-friendly alternatives for those that are just starting out. But alright, you might be wondering what's next? What's next with this channel? Well, I've got some exciting plans for future videos. I will do budget builds, so we'll explore even more affordable setups for those that are just starting their AI journey. And we'll use single GPU configurations and test those. And we'll test different GPUs. We'll go into the performance of these GPUs in a wide range of AI tasks. Perhaps you have some suggestions what else we could test than what we have tested right now. We're also going to test PCIe bifurcation with different setups. And we're also going to build something quite big. Like we're going to build a server with 12 GPUs. So that will be quite funny. We'll also look at our software optimization and look if we find tweaks for faster inference. And we'll also try to find out different real-world AI projects. But there are like many possible ways in which you can use AI. So this is probably not the main focus. We're more focused on AI hardware. And perhaps, I hope, we can also have a look at emerging hardware if my budget or our budget allows for it. But we'll probably mostly stick to budget-friendly approaches. So we're for sure going to test Kepler, Maxwell, and some more Pascal GPUs, but also Tesla GPUs. So the T4 is a plan, and I would also like to test V100s, but right now they're insanely expensive. Remember, at AI Home Labs, it's all about making AI accessible and affordable. So this is more what we are looking into. If you enjoyed this content and want to see more, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. And your support helps us really to continue creating these videos and exploring new ways to democratize AI technology. If you have any specific topics you'd like to see us cover in future videos, please make sure to post a comment. And if you have any suggestions for how we could do it better, also like constructive feedback is highly appreciated. And if you're building your own AI lab, make sure to share your experiences in the comment sections or also on X. We're all learning together in this exciting field. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep experimenting, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI here at AI Home Labs.
In the world of AI Home Lab, every day there's something new. Fun and bright and